From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is The Hub with Wang Guan.
Hello and welcome to The Hub on CGTN. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. While the Gaza conflict continues, the Houthis have launched attacks on vessels in the Red Sea for 2 months in so-called solidarity with the Palestinians. In response, U.S. and British forces have launched joint strikes targeting Houthi militants in Yemen. Washington has carried out a series of unilateral air raids also, but Houthis remain undeterred and say counterattacks will continue. Will tensions in the Red Sea veer into a wider conflict in the Middle East, and what's fueling these tensions? To delve deeper into these questions, I'm joined in Beijing by He Wenping, Professor and Research Program Director at the Institute of West Asian and African Studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Welcome. I'll also be talking to Ambassador William Courtney, Adjunct Senior Fellow at the RAND Corporation and former Special Assistant to the U.S. President for Russia, Ukraine, and Eurasia. He's in Washington, D.C. Welcome, sir. And from Hong Kong, China, we have Ebrahim Hashem from Hong Kong University's Asia Global Initiative. Welcome to all of you. Ebrahim, you're closest to the region from where you come from, your heritage. So let me start with you, if you don't mind. Can you help us navigate through all these intricacies and explain to our viewers why is the situation in the Red Sea so important, and do you consider it a spillover of the Gaza conflict?
In a nutshell, what's happening in the Red Sea is directly connected with what's happening in Palestine. So we know that since the 7th of October, we have had a major conflict happening in Gaza, a major massacre being committed by the Israeli army against the Palestinians. So that's basically the direct, contribution of the Gaza problem to the Red Sea. But we have to look at the big picture. And the big picture is since World War II, we have had a number of changes in the world order. So post-World War II, we had the Cold War, which was basically a bipolar world. And then in the beginning of the 1990s, we had the collapse of the Soviet Union. And then that was the start of the unipolar world. And the unipolar world did not really last too long until around 2008, the financial crisis, the economic crisis that hit the United States and Europe and other parts of the world. And that was around that time, the unipolar world ended. And since then, we have been transitioning into a different world order. And I would assume, currently looking at the factors and the rise of other poles, other powers, currently we are already living in a de facto multipolar world. But this multipolar world has not been institutionalized across the current global governance system. Why I'm just bringing all this into our conversation? Because it's also our region that has been evolving since World War II, or I would say also since the First World War, since the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire. Now, our region is not really dominated by one single power. It's becoming more multi-aligned. It's really just, having relations with different powers and so on and so forth. Now, I'm bringing all this into our conversation just to really give the context. Our region and what's happening in the Red Sea is really linked to also the changes happening in our regional order and our world order. The attacks against the Houthis, launched by the British and the American forces, they are really escalating the situation, raising tensions and adding basically fuel to the fire. And this is something that the regional countries want to avoid, because the regional countries are really embarking on major economic development programs, and any issues related to security and destabilization of the region will really derail and delay these economic programs.
Yeah, Ambassador Courtney, let me turn to you. Do you agree with Ebrahim, whereby he said the U.S. and the Western's military actions targeting Yemen is adding fuel to the fire and raising tensions instead of mitigating it?
Well, we have to take a look at the context. We find that in three different contexts in the region, Iranian-backed militants have been carrying out destructive actions. So the Hamas launched an unprovoked, massive terrorist attack on Israel, killing more Jews in a single day than any time since the Holocaust. In the Red Sea, the Houthis, also backed by Iran, have launched strikes which the Houthis claimed were against Israeli shipping, but in fact they've been firing against almost any kind of ship, commercial ship, merchant ship that comes through the region. And the United Nations Security Council just passed a resolution commending states, members of the United Nations, for enhancing the safety and security of the passage in that area.
But do you think the UN resolution gave a blank check to the U.S. military action?
Let me finish. And then a third context is Iran-backed militant groups are attacking U.S. forces in the region in Jordan, Syria, Iraq, which are trying to protect against the ISIS threat. So in all three cases, Iran is really provoking conflict throughout the region, which is very destabilizing. And so hopefully China and a number of other countries will put more pressure on Iran to cease that.
Well, one justification by the U.S. military actions is so-called in accordance with the inherent right of individual and collective self-defense consistent with the U.S. Charter, although the UN resolution specifically did not authorize any military actions for any party. What do you make of the legality of these military actions?
Well, the United Nations Charter itself authorizes self-defense. So the United States, Great Britain, and a number of other countries have formed a coalition to protect the region from Houthi attacks, to protect shipping from a number of countries, including Chinese ships that have passed through the region. So this is perfectly consistent with the UN Security Council resolution just passed, commending member states for enhancing the safety and security of shipping in the region.
Professor He Wenping, let me turn to you. How do you look at the necessity of stopping, on one hand, the Houthi attacks on the commercial vessels, which Ambassador Courtney did make a fair point, whereby the Chinese commercial ships are going through those sea lanes as well. But if you look at the legality of the U.S. attacks, is it, as Ebrahim has put it, adding fuel to the fire?
Well, I do agree. This kind of overusing the self-defense, like targeting airstrike the territory in Yemen, actually is adding the fuels to the fires. Because you look about this effect, actually those tensions building in the Red Sea now is not saying getting less, rather than it's getting up, and then even more tensions going on, and the cost this insafety of this waterway. Very important for the international trade and global economy. Actually, when we look about all those scenarios happening in this area, we can see this called the causes and effect. This kind of mutual relation, those interaction between the two. When you talk about the causes, and then the Houthis said they want to use this as a leverage to stop those bombardment to Gaza Strip. So because they are small, they have no voice, can be heard in the those international stage, Security Council, whatever. So their leverage is trying to make full use of their location nearby the Red Sea. So trying to use this before they are saying they're targeting the Israel, those vessels or some vessels related with Israel. So make it clear, this is the causes. So if we now look about effect, if you not go to address those causes, and then using another way, saying bombing and then self-defense, and then if you're trying to attack the vessel, I will destroy even this all the bases, even cause the civilian deaths, casualty in Yemen territory. Of course, cannot. This is not the right way to address the causes, and then make this effect now not goes to like a better situation. Say now we can guarantee nothing happened to those international these vessels pass through that that area. You see now there's no big company there to go through that travel road. Now they all go to another way to down to the south of the African continent. So of course they will damage international this economic recovery, and also added lots of cost for all those commodities. Eventually, I think that will get the burden, to all those international customers. Everything will be, rise up, price up. So you see the effect itself is not going to the good way. So if you not go to the causes, address the causes, I don't see by that's using the force, saying, well, we are bigger, we are stronger, we are going to kill the smaller, tiny Houthi, but you cannot destroy them all. They are hiding somewhere in the territory. They are small, and then that means their flexibility, very flexibility. They even can now using the rocket to hit the Americans marry. This is warships, and also hit just not long ago hit another oil tank within the flag like a British one. So you see, you cannot destroy them. So I think without understand this kind of causes and the effect in a right way, actually we are in a dilemma. On one hand, saying we need to guarantee the safety of this waterway, but on the other hand, the effect goes with another round. You cannot guarantee at all.
Okay, Ambassador Courtney, do you want to quickly respond?
Well, the last speaker did point out the importance of the waterway for international shipping. And certainly China and the United States are among the largest countries in the world that depend on freedom of navigation of the world's seas and depend on the usage of the waterways for commercial emergent shipping. And China, of course, uses the Suez Canal quite extensively for its own shipping back and forth to Europe. So it's clear that China, the United States, and other countries really have an interest in continuing the protection of shipping in that area. And so we hope that China will express its strong concern to Iran about these attacks.
Yeah, Ebrahim, China's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Zhang Jun, warns that the Middle East region is on the brink of extreme danger. And Ambassador Zhang Jun said this. He said this is reckless military adventurism. It should be avoided. I also pointed out that, he questions the legitimacy of this self-defense claim. Do you think this is self-defense or power politics at play?
If you notice one thing about the U.S.-led coalition that has been established to really go after the Houthis, you will notice one thing that the Arab countries have avoided this coalition for one single reason, or one main reason, and that is they don't see military force or military solution is the solution to the problem. Even if we just go after the Houthis and just attack them militarily, we will be still using a band-aid solution. This is only the tip of the iceberg. If we want to really look at the main problem, the major part of the problem, the root cause of the problem, is the situation in Gaza. So the massacre being committed in Gaza and the attempt of really liquidating Palestine is the major issue. Just going back to the point that was raised earlier, that you have countries, major countries like United States and China being affected by what's happening in the Red Sea. But in my opinion, the countries that are really being affected the most are the regional countries. If you really look at the Red Sea, both sides, both coasts of the Red Sea on the Saudi side and on the other side, the Egyptian side, you will see on the Saudi side, you will see major economic projects really taking place coming down from Jazan, really close to the border with Yemen. There is a huge economic industrial zone being built jointly between the Saudis and the Chinese. And then if you just go up, you will see that there's another major project, Yumba project, is also, there's a major refining complex there, and that refinery produces petroleum products. And then if you go a little bit higher up to the two small islands, Iran and Sanafir, you will see the Neom project, the futuristic city being built by the Saudis with a budget of around half a trillion. And then if you look at the Egyptian side, the Egyptians government gets around $10 billion from the Suez Canal. And as a result of the escalations in the Red Sea, there's a reduction of around 40%, 40 to 50% in the revenues, the hard currency. And Egypt this year is going to be paying foreign debt of around $30 billion. And because of the reduction in their revenues, their fiscal revenues in the Suez Canal, they will have challenges in doing that. So just going back to the point, who's actually really being affected the most, in my opinion, the regional countries, especially their long-term strategies are being really just, at the risk of just being delayed and so on and so forth. One thing I just want to highlight quickly here, we are talking about the Red Sea, but even before the Red Sea, we have had a lot of challenges in the trade. Since the pandemic, we have had disruptions in the global supply chains because of the pandemic, and there was an increase of 1% in inflation, global inflation. And then recently we had the Ukraine situation, and as a result of that, we had disruptions and maritime trade, especially in the Black Sea, the exports of wheat and energy. And then even more recently, we have had challenges with the Panama Canal as a result of the shortages in the fresh water, and there is a reduction in the ship transits across the Panama Canal. And all this, and if you add what's happening in the Red Sea, all this is actually just adding trouble to global trade, to global supply chains, and so on and so forth. So we have to really look at the big picture also, not only what the Houthis are doing, and we have to link it to the root causes of what's happening in the Red Sea. And the root causes of the problem are located in Gaza, are located in Palestine. If we do not really solve that problem, what's going to happen? We will have escalations after escalations, and as we know that recently there was an attack on the military base in Jordan, and
Ebrahim, we'll be talking about that very attack. Actually, that happened, I think, near the Jordanian border with Syria. And then Joe Biden responded saying that we shall respond. Joe Biden called it radical Iran-backed militant groups operating in Syria and Iraq. So, Professor He Wenping, some are considering this event a major escalation in response to the attacks on U.S. troops. Do you see tensions in the Red Sea escalating into a wider Middle East crisis?
Oh, yes, that's for sure. This tension now has been risen, and also the spillover of this Gaza, this the Hamas war with Israel now has been certainly now go wider and wider. This is also against, I think, Americans' interests as well, because from the perspective of Biden administration, I don't think this White House would like to see this tension getting up and then spill over, getting wider and wider. And eventually, you see, unfortunately, even 3 American soldiers has been killed, and then more than 30 has been wounded. Just the case you just recently, you just raised. I will want to, highlight, when the big powers are trying to do something for, cooling down the situation there, you have to pay attention to those small players. There are many, many small players, even some are out of the control from all those government there in that region. Like this time around, Iraqi, this military, the rebel forces, this called the military forces, Islamic, saying Islamic organization, they self-claim, they made this wrong attack to Americans' military bases. So think about how many Americans' military bases in Syria, in Iraqi, so quite a lot. So they have been under attack, now under threat by themselves. So cannot just saying like, China should do something. China pass some wars to Iran. Actually, I think the root causes should be this bombardment in Gaza. So maybe White House should pass very strong words to Israel. How to do this ceasefire. Recently, I heard there's a negotiation going on. Lots of a positive message came out saying Egypt, Qatar, and of course, Israel, U.S. now almost reach some framework for those ceasefire. Even Hamas also now has the willing to do this ceasefire. So not just the humanitarian ceasefire is not enough at all. Should be permanent one. Ceasefire, bring this war to the end. So if the root causes, this causes has been resolved, and then all others spill over, other things I think is much easier can be handled.
Yeah, Ambassador Courtney, do you think the root cause lies in Gaza, and what do you think should be done at this point to defuse tensions?
There are independent causes in the region. If there is a root cause anywhere, it's in Iran, because Iran is the one sponsoring Hamas. The Hamas terrorist strike in Israel was based on help that Iran gave to Hamas. Hamas backs the Houthis, who are attacking the ships. And the speaker before last was quite correct that Egypt is being harmed by the Houthi attacks on merchant shipping, which is diverting merchant shipping from going through the Suez Canal. And then Iran, as I mentioned before, sponsors Houthi, Hezbollah, and other radical groups that are attacking U.S. forces in Jordan, Syria, and Iraq. So it's clear that all these issues are important, but there's no single root cause for every single activity in the region, because the region has a diversity of problems. But with regard to the Red Sea, the Houthi attacks on merchant shipping are something that China, the U.S., and the world community have concern about. The UN resolution that just passed, which China abstained on, the U.S. supported, was a resolution that condemned the Houthi attacks on merchant shipping. So I think that's the immediate issue that needs to be addressed. What happens to Palestine is another issue that may take longer. But right now, the urgent issue is to stop the attacks on the shipping.
Yeah, Ebrahim, how do you foresee this to progress and to proceed? After all, each side needs to present to their domestic audience or to their home base that they're winning and they're progressing somehow. Given these realities and the constraints, how do you foresee the conflict in Yemen and in Gaza as well to proceed? And really, how do you expect these tensions to be diffused?
The risk of really a regional war is real. I disagree with the ambassador that the region is plagued with so many problems, and we cannot really trace the origins of these problems, these challenges. I think the central issue, the overarching issue of the region is the issue of Palestine. The Palestinians getting their rights to have a state of their own. We have already been talking about, a two-state solution for decades, but nothing really happened on the ground. On the contrary, we see some Israeli politicians really trying to sabotage the solution, the two-state solution, by really increasing settlements and increasing the number of settlements everywhere, including in the West Bank. Now, the point that I raised earlier about the revenues getting really the Egyptian government not being able to get enough revenues to really just to pay its debt. This is, in my opinion, indirect pressure being put on the Egyptian government to really be more lenient, to accept whatever fait accompli being proposed by the Israelis and its sponsors or its backers, because as we know, Egypt is on the front line representing the Arab voice, really defending the rights of the Palestinians. So by really increasing the pressure on the economic pressure, financial pressure on the Egyptians, so that the Egyptians can really just open the border, so that the attempt or the fear of really just liquidating the Palestine issue, by displacing the Palestinians from Gaza into Sinai and then displacing the other Palestinians in West Bank into Jordan, so that the whole question of Palestine will be addressed or resolved or liquidated once for all. And this is the biggest fear that we have in the region, that there's a secret, possibly, plan to really do that. And that's why, if you notice how the Israelis have really carried out this war, this massacre, this atrocity against the Palestinians, you will notice that they are going after everything. They're going and bombing hospitals, schools, cities within the Gaza Strip. They want to make it uninhabitable so that even after they leave, they cannot really go back because everything has been really annihilated. And this is the biggest fear. To just going forward, to really solve this challenge, this issue, we have to really just accept the two-state solution that has been included in a number of resolutions by the UN and also included in the 2002 Arab Peace Initiative.
Yeah, the question, the devil lies in the details. Is really about which territory belongs to where, and which years were those territories being carved out. So, Professor He, China has reiterated its calls for Houthis militants to stop attacks in the Red Sea. What role is China playing, and what role will it play in the future?
Yes, without any, question that China has been always saying we have to guarantee this freedom of navigation through this Red Sea, because China also one of those, country we have to pass a lot of those vessels, commercial vessels, go through that very important waterway. This is no question about that. That's why, recently Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, when he visited Africa, he also, together with Egyptian counterpart and also together with Arab League, we published joint statement. In that joint statement, calling for this Red Sea crisis have to be addressed, and that those Houthis should stop those attack to any those commercial vessels gone through that area. And this is not about our stance, but the thing is, like I mentioned before, you have to address these causes, root causes. The root causes is not saying Iran is a troublemaker. That is the war. The war is coming from Donald Trump administration. They're saying the major issue in the Middle East is not Palestinian, and Israel-Palestine is two-state solution. Seems Palestine state making that the request can be ignored. Even make Israel's, even U.S. embassy, all the way move from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This is of course harming the feeling from Palestinian side. So that is the different thing about the root causes. What is the root causes in the Middle East? If you cannot reach consensus about that, cannot address the root causes, and then you cannot, resolve the Red Sea crisis as well. Because you can see very clearly, if you using the self-defense, this term written in the UN resolution, all right, you airstrike those Yemen Houthi, their bases on their territory, and then these Houthis will strike those even U.S. the warships and make this trouble even bigger. So what is the hope for restore the peace and the safety, this waterway? We cannot see any positive results coming from all those actions now has been made.
Professor He, Ebrahim, and Ambassador Courtney, thank you also very much for coming on our show. Thank you. And that will do it for this edition of The Hub on CGTN. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Wang Guan. Our news coverage continues. Bye and take care.